Well, Nedbank has welcomed Standard & Poor's stable rating awarded to South Africa. It says this is positive for progress in rebuilding confidence in the country. The bank says the ratings agency's stable outlook should be seen as a change in sentiment by international investors. Nedbank has also welcomed the rating agency's acknowledgement of the progress made since the December ANC elective conference to stabilize the fiscal outlook. In South Africa, the gap between the rich and the poor continues to widen while economic growth is stagnant. One expert says policy changes are needed to boost consumer confidence and to support growth. Global Vice-President of Canback Consulting, that's Arshad Abba, joins us now. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you.
For your time today. I mean, it was a bit of a bittersweet comment from Standard & Poor's on Friday, basically saying that, look, they are impressed that there's been some significant and sustained improvement since December, but that they will still need to see some signs of economic growth. They also need to see us dealing with our fiscal problems as well, right?
Absolutely. I think what we have seen is that we've still got a long way to get to recovery. So I think the positive mood is there in terms of where we want to go. But I think it will take a hard effort to actually get through what we've seen over the last 5 or 10 years. And unfortunately, what we've seen is that we have to raise some taxes, which will have a direct impact on consumers. And for example, the increase in VAT rate itself will have a huge impact on the industry. Not only will the consumer feel it, but the growth rates, especially to fast-moving consumer goods products, will probably decline as consumers move to cheaper products or reduce the amount of consumption. So yes, I mean, very positive in terms of where we're looking. I think the government is making the right noises.
Yeah.
We need to make the economy a bit easier for people to operate and to run businesses. And we need to see longevity in terms of moving forward in the right direction.
But let's look at that impact on consumers, because all consumers are not equal. We live in a very unequal society. Some are impacted differently than others. And let's talk about what that particular impact on high-income earners compared to low-income earners might look like.
I think the first point we look at is that any price increase in a market like South Africa is so sensitive that it will influence the choice of product that consumer buys. For example, in the lower end of the market, we have consumers that earn less than 26,000 Rand a year.
Yeah.
That's about 2,000 a month. They spend about 60% of their income just on basic necessities. We're talking food, beverages, housing, and not even education. So by the time they actually come out of what they've got, they actually have no money in their pocket to actually spend on what they want to spend. Now imagine putting on top of that a 50 Rand extra per 1,000 Rand of expenditure because of a VAT increase to the marketplace, largely felt in that segment of the marketplace, even if we have goods rated at 0%. And I think we have to acknowledge that the more we don't get away from wasteful expenditure in the country, the more we don't resolve those matters, somehow some of these costs will be passed on to the companies, who will then pass on the cost to the consumers. So I would say that 2018 is possibly, and 2019, going to be a very difficult year for consumers.
Goodness. And of course, that then has massive effects on economic growth as well, if people aren't able to spend.
Effectively, lower expenditure equals lower growth. And I think we'll see that coming out, but also more importantly, lower savings. And we'll see that huge impact coming through. We already see, when we look at the debt to disposable income levels, very high in this country. And we're seeing that consumers continue, for example, when we look at marketplaces and when we do work in the marketplaces, people are actually moving away from what we call branded goods into, for example, private labels. So if you look at shelf spaces in most of your supermarkets today, we don't see much of our branded goods out there.
Yeah. What's precipitated that change?
So this is a trend that has been going on all over the world.
Yeah.
I think as consumers find quality in the products they're looking at, they're becoming what I call brand agnostic. They're not so much looking at the brands anymore. As long as they can get that quality of product they're looking for, they're willing to take it at a lower price as long as it meets their needs. And in the lower end of the market, we're seeing people moving down to smaller packs.
Yeah.
So we're seeing, for example, someone would drink a 1 liter would move down to a 500 milliliter. And all of that is purely on the basis that people cannot afford it, but they want to have some taste of the product, or they have a need for that product.
What are the implications then for the industry itself? Are they adapting to these trends of what consumers are buying and not buying?
Well, what is happening in the marketplace, in some instances, you'll see that they have larger packs at a lower Rand per liter price. In other instances, you see when we get tax increases, for example, if we look at sin taxes in the tobacco industry, where there's a high level of illicit trade, most of the time what they do is they actually they actually are absorbing some of the costs. But the reality is that as we increase these prices, we actually move some of the consumers into what we call the illicit market, which is a higher risk in terms of what we're looking at. So I think there's a double-edged sword we're looking at. Yeah. On the one side, too expensive. On the other side, the consumer wants the product. He moves on to the illicit market. And
that illicit market, of course, means that we're losing out on tax revenue.
Absolutely.
Goodness. So there are some serious structural issues that we're going to have to deal with. And as you say, we are in recovery mode at the moment for the economy. But at the same time, we are dealing with VAT increases. We're dealing with fuel levy increases. I wonder what then that means for growth this year. There are these expectations. Everybody's revising the expectations for growth upwards. But how much are we factoring in the real impact of these tax increases?
I don't think we've really felt the true impact of the tax increases. I think when we saw oil rising close to $80, luckily it's come down now to $77, because that would have a second-round effect, which we have to pass on. So I think, yes, there will be some growth coming through the economy. But essentially, for South Africa as an economy to thrive and for us to increase greater employment, we need to get around 5 to 6%. We're just going to be lucky to get to 2% this year. And that is a challenge we will face for the next few years.
Goodness. All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks for your time. Today, Global Vice President of Canback Consulting, Arshad Abba.